Hi there, and welcome to Live with Sujay, Headliners of Hope. And we're all the way live and in living color. So, I like to wear color. I'm wearing color, but we're working today with an artist who is my special guest. We welcome today Michele A. Butler. Welcome to Live with Sujay.
Well, thank you for having me today. This is great. I really appreciate the opportunity to once again show my work here at LTV.
Oh, we're so excited to have it. This is about hope, and you bring hope through your work. But let's just talk a little bit about your background. You spent summers out here growing up. You and your twin brother, and you had sisters, and you had two professions. This is your third walk, right?
Oh my gosh, at least two.
Okay.
My main field was in human services.
Yes.
I did work for the town of East Hampton. My last job there was as a coordinator for a senior citizen program with the goal of keeping the seniors at home as long as possible.
Okay, that's
So
amazing.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's very much needed out here as well. I mean, you think of seniors, and right away everyone thinks that they're in a nursing home.
Yes, yes.
But our goal was to monitor them. I oversaw staff people who would shop for them, clean for them.
Oh, that's so
and
amazing.
if there were any changes cognitively or physically, the homemaker aides would report back to me. I would contact the social worker, who would then contact their family and see if other arrangements had to be made.
Oh, that's amazing. We need more care like that. That's that
Yes.
personal touch, because not everyone wants to just put you away. Sometimes you want to be in your home, in your own facility.
People live better.
Yes.
They live longer when they're in their own familiar surroundings.
Exactly, very much
Right.
so. But you've also worked with developmentally disabled and other
Oh,
populations
yes.
as well,
Yeah.
right?
When I first moved out here full time around 1988, that was my first job here. I was a recreational therapist. Then I did basically Medicare social work type of making sure they got their services.
Yes.
And I also developed programs, living skills programs for them, basic ADL skills, how do you brush your
Yes.
teeth. And these were generally severely retarded, sorry, not that word.
Now, developmentally disabled.
Developmentally disabled.
Yes.
At the time, that was the watchword, so
Yeah.
my mindset is still back there.
So I pastored a church on the Lower East Side, and we had one of the first homes for the developmentally disabled. It's called
Oh.
Judd House, and it housed like 12 young men and women, and just to do those things and give them a sense of home and nurture, which was
Yes.
and independence, which
And
was
independence,
which was so
where they
important.
could still make their own choices within a limited, guided setting.
Exactly.
That's so important.
But you also worked here at the Whaling Museum, I heard.
I did.
Okay.
Sag Harbor Historical and Whaling Museum.
Yes.
I was, started there managing the gift shop, which was a lot of fun. Then progressively moved up the ranks to assistant manager, then general manager.
So history is in your veins, because I saw you also are part of the Eastville Historical Society, and you're an officer there, and you're making sure that our history is preserved, not only here on the East End, but just history in general. So how did you become so involved and interested in history?
I think I always did. If I had been able to go back, well, I started out as an African American history major,
Okay.
African and African American studies.
Yes.
But then I thought, well, what would I really do with it? I did not want to teach in that subject necessarily. So I always had that in the back of my mind. But I went into political science and public administration. But
Yes.
always had that interest in history. What came before us? Who was here before us? What buildings were here before us?
Yes.
What was the landscape like? 100 years, 20 years ago was totally different. 200 years from now, this place will be totally different as well.
Exactly.
But I see this as an ongoing process. We're living history, you're living history.
Yes.
And the thought somehow that all of this will be forgotten, people from 200 years ago, nobody will know their names, you don't even know your own ancestors' names.
Right.
I just find something about that so demoralizing.
Well, that's why this is called Headliners of Hope, because you keep hope alive in the real sense. Reverend Jesse Jackson used to say that.
Yes.
But just know who you are, know where we came from, know who was
Yes.
before you and who's succeeding us as well, which is so important. But you also had your own local art gallery, which is why we're here today, because I think you describe it as a cultural artist with a reimaginative narrative.
Something of that nature,
Okay,
yes.
How do you describe yourself?
I describe myself as a narrative folk artist.
Folk artist, okay.
But intuitive as well. I don't like the terms naive or primitive. To me, nothing's really falls into that category. So my works all tell a story.
Yes.
I started out basically with the mindset again that I would tell religious stories, mythological stories, dream interpretations. But now what I'm doing more so is focusing on the local mythology, the forgotten stories here that you don't hear about, or you may get only a very brief snippet of something. There's so much rich history.
Because you're living right on the block with Mount Zion. Is it AME Zion Church?
Yes, St. David Amy Zion
St. David,
Church.
yes. And those are important histories because that was one of the Underground Railroad stops, I
Yeah,
understand.
theoretically it was. Several houses in the Eastville area on Liberty Street on Eastville Avenue either have, as well as the church itself, have a little trap doors or they have a little hidden closet somewhere.
Yes.
And Liberty Street, we always wonder how that got its name. It really leads right down to the beach and the bay,
Yes.
where people smuggled up from the beach up to St. David's Church
Yes.
or into one of the surrounding homes, and then on the way to wherever Canada or somewhere like that.
Oh, that's so interesting. We have to write this history. I'm so glad. And you record it in your writings and in your artwork.
Yes.
So I'm going to start with the two that are facing us that they
Yes.
cannot see. I'm going to ask you to hold that one, and I'm going to hold this one. Tell us who and what we're looking at. So can you catch this on the camera, Michaels? Yes, thank you.
This is old African Tom. Now, luckily with this, well, we don't call them runaways anymore. It's freedom seekers or self-emancipators because
I love it.
to me, the runaway is like an errant child that didn't like his lunch and has this,
Yes,
typical pole and the knapsack of stuff in it. These were people who were actually trying to augment their own lives, move on away from enslavement. And this is basically here on Long Island. This is old African Tom. And fortunately, those runaway ads provided us with a lot of detailed information. This gentleman was African born. He spoke broken English. He was between the ages of 95 and 100 years of age.
My goodness.
So he also had
a little limp.
One leg was shorter than the other.
Yeah.
So that throws your whole body out of alignment.
Yes, it does.
Your shoulders, your waistline, your ankles, everything.
Yes.
And my mindset is that, well, he could not have traveled very far in this condition, being elderly, being physically disabled. So what did he do? He probably went away by boat, which is what we see here in the background. Down I consider it a typical Eastern Long Island colonial town. It's sort of a generic look to it, but it could have been really any of these towns here.
Yes.
Southold had enslaved people, Shelter Island did, Sag Harbor did, all the East End here. And if you follow with David Rattray and Donna Marie Barnes,
yes,
with their Forgetting to Remember project and Hidden in Plain Sight as well, they are documenting a lot of this information.
Which is so important.
Yes.
So you imagine where they would have gone or what would have happened with them as afterwards. Now tell me what I'm looking at here. This is beautiful.
Oh, thank you. This is actually Elizabeth Bowser. She lived, her home was on the corner of Hempstead Street and Liberty Street.
Okay, this is called Liberty Liz.
Liberty Liz, yes. Everybody called her Liz Bowser.
Okay.
And she was one of the earlier families that summered here in Sag Harbor.
Yes.
She's a granddaughter of T. Thomas Fortune.
Yes.
And her grandmother had been a seamstress to a captain, and that's how they first came to Sag Harbor.
Okay.
And eventually they acquired the home, which about 4 years ago it finally left their
ownership.
Yeah,
my grandmother was a seamstress also, which was our first family business, and she became a stylist after that in the Deep South. So now this is one of those that we are looking at. Now this is called Professor James Van Houten Battles a Sea Monster.
Yes.
Okay.
James Van Houten. Now, this is one of my more recent paintings, and around the border you'll see the types of fish that are caught in the local waters here. You'll see sea bass, mackerel, eels, all of these food sources that people here would capture. Now, the storyline, and my brother found this in a newspaper from 1904. Now, Professor Van Houten and the whole Van Houten family were musicians, and he was a musical teacher, had his own group of students that he taught, and he was considered a very stable, upstanding member of the community. But one day while he's out fishing, a sea monster, and I had to look up what that was at that time in 1904. Basically, it was an octopus. And I said, well, what types of octopi were here in these waters? Generally, they're not in the bays. They would be out in the ocean. But this one, there's sort of a pinkish color, but this had attacked his boat, was dragging him out to sea. And he had to take his grapnel hook, which is basically like a little anchor with 3 hooks on it, and fight this beast off. And the reason why we also know that this is a true story, notwithstanding his high reputation, he also was seen by several people in boats around. And so there's huge commotion, these foam and things, the water being churned up. And I said, well, this is a true story. And unfortunately, after this, he didn't live much longer.
What year would this have been, or years roughly?
This was 1904, the early 20th century.
Oh, wow,
And
okay.
the Van Houten connection also is that one of his daughters did marry a Montaukett woman. I think her name was Florence.
Yes.
Yeah, she might have been Chief Wyandanche's daughter. So I also tried to incorporate into my paintings the intermingling of the different cultures and races here, the Afro-Indigenous people, the European people, and because again,
and now we have a lot of Shinnecock,
yeah, the
native
Montaukett people,
Montaukett. Yes,
yes,
that is amazing. So now I'm looking at this one behind us. So we're surrounded by all this wonderful artwork. This is all done by Michael A. Butler, my guest for today, and he is amazing. So we're telling stories. His works tell stories, narrative
folk
art.
Yes.
Oh, I'm loving this. So now, please, this is a building in process, and tell us what we're looking at here.
This is the construction of the current headquarters, the Heritage House of the Eastville Community Historic Society.
Of which you now are one of the officers.
I was a former president, vice president, recording secretary. I now just oversee the cemetery.
Okay.
St. David Amy Zion Cemetery, which is up the block on Eastville Avenue.
Yes.
But I've been involved with Eastville Historical since the late 80s.
So this is where we have our fish fry and all of the events?
Yes, that same building. Now, as you probably know, this was a Sears Roebuck construction kit house.
Oh.
So the parts all arrived by truck, by train, then a wagon. They're not really sure because this is the early 1920s.
Yes.
The method of constructing the home was the men of the neighborhood would get together with their tools and supplies and follow the schematic and the template and construct the building. So this is lunchtime.
Wow.
Where the wives and children are bringing the men their lunches in tin pails and baskets.
It's amazing.
And again, of course, there are no photos of it, so it's just my interpretation, my imagination as to who was here, who the constructionists were.
I love it because we only see usually pictures of the Amish building homes, but this is I'm learning so much about our history just talking with you.
Well,
so tell me, what are the materials that you like to use to work? What are we looking at? Oils, acrylics? Tell me what you would like to work
These are all acrylics. I've tried oils, but it does not dry quickly enough for me.
Okay.
I like to get in there with my fine point brushes, noodle around, do the details, do the eyes and everything, and then move on. But if I'm working with oil, I don't know, I tried it, it just does not work for me. I've tried watercolor, which I cannot do. My brother Martin, whom you know, does great watercolors, but mine run together, I end up with mud or something like that, and it's like, nah.
So you're twins, so the creative genes just flow through the two of you?
We have other relatives more distant that either create jewelry. There were some others who are artists as well.
Right.
Painters.
So I'm a creative in terms of writing and the sermons and books. So, for me, I have to kind of get in a certain space. And out here is wonderful, being near the water. But it kind of simmers in me. It starts maybe on Monday. If I have to speak on next Sunday, it might start on Monday. And, throughout the week, I'll see little tidbits that I add.
Yes.
How does it... what time would it take you to paint one of these? Or do you start, stop, and come back? Talk to us about the process of being a creative.
I start and stop. Very often just a phrase will stick in my head. And I'll start developing a mental image of what that will look like, the colors I'll use. I may do a very brief sketch.
Yeah.
I start and stop. Some of these paintings may take months, close to a year to complete.
Okay.
I'll do research again on the clothing, the colors, like what is a buff colored trouser? What is that exactly? I know what buff is in my mind, but in 1790, what was buff?
Okay.
What was the material? Like this gentleman, as we saw before, had blue stockings and I think a wool stocking of a medium blue. So I do a lot of research into this. What boats look like.
So I look at plays, and the costume designers have to go back to that period and research what they were.
Yes.
So you're doing that also with your painting.
Yes.
That's amazing. We would never even think about that. So let's look at one of your other paintings that I was just so impressed with when I came into the studio today. Can you hold that for us and tell us what we're looking at there? I love water and the aquas, so that just caught my eye.
Yeah, so many of my works do revolve around the water, as well as clouds and sky. Sometimes the ocean, but this one is more so a creek. It's called Out of the Mists. And you'll see an indigenous woman and an African American woman in this boat. And it's sort of a play on the words of out of the mists of time, out of the mists of history.
Yes.
Where are they coming from? What is their purpose? Where are they going? And again, it sort of alludes to our food sources here.
Okay.
Fishing, clamming,
Mm-hmm.
catching eels,
Yes.
whatever we needed to sustain ourselves in this environment. So people often ask me, did you move out here for the water and the sky? I
Yes.
said, no, not really, because they're intertwined. We
Right.
get this beautiful light.
Yes.
Did you move here for the light? Because we're surrounded by so much water.
Yes.
And the reflection between the two, and that's what, it's more so, it's not specifically, but it's sort of ingrained within
Yes.
me that I interpret these as part of my process and
I love
flowing
it.
through.
So when I was shopping for homes, when we were shopping for homes, what pulled me in was the way the light was drawn on my house. I'm in Nazareth,
Yes.
but it was the light. When I walked in, I was like, "This is my house." You know, it had to hit me.
You know it
the right way.
Yes,
you know
for
it exactly.
Well, you're intuitive
Yes.
yourself, so you would pick up on that.
So have you done any book covers? Have you done anything
Oh
like
my
that? 'Cause,
gosh.
I'm thinking as we're speaking, I'm like, I have a couple of books in my head. I'm putting these two collaboratives together. Have you done book covers or any magazine covers or anything like that? Or has your work been in a magazine?
Well, it's been on 4 dance covers.
Oh, really?
Yes, as well as 2 years ago, I did the American Music Festival in Sag Harbor. I did that cover,
Yes.
which was of St. David Amy Zion Church.
Yes.
And the group was Charles Surgeon, who has roots in Eastville as well as on Shinnecock Reservation.
Yes.
His family used to own Ivy Cottage, which is one of the early summer rental
Yes.
bungalows that people would go to during the summer. But where were we? I get lost in my
No,
thoughts.
I'm not just saying dance papers, which they're going to be one of the sponsors
Yes.
for our cultural celebration that we
Great,
do
great.
here at LTV. So, I want to thank LTV for sponsoring us July 3rd this year in 2025. And then this was another one that's small, but it's powerful. Please tell us. Now, the back reads, Crank at the Crossroads. So I love alliteration also.
Yeah.
But tell us about what's cranking and who's cranking here.
Well, this is another gentleman who was a self-emancipator.
Okay.
On this side, I did put a synopsis of the Runaway Papers.
Uh-huh.
But I have Crank at the Crossroads because he's come to this crossing the road. And apparently, Crank was someone who would run away, leave his domicile, go. He didn't want to leave his wife necessarily, so he'd go back and forth between freedom and sort of a limited arrangement of enslavement or maybe some other form. But I don't know that he was ever punished for it, but there are a couple of Cranks. So this was another thing I said, well, Crank is an odd name.
Yes.
You think of somebody who might be termed a crank.
Yes.
And they're a curmudgeon and they're, not a pleasant person. But Crank also means lively.
Okay.
So well, maybe as a baby he was, constantly moving and running or something.
And these were papers that they actually had to carry with them as they left?
No, this was not like a seaman certificate, like if they were going on. But this was actually what would be posted in newspapers to show that what they were looking for. Again, the description of the clothing, the colors, the fabrics, everything of that nature. The hat, even the tricorn hat.
Yes.
All of that was listed. This is a synopsis.
Yeah, but you color coordinate this thing. This is so good. I love the blues and the aquas and the way that you put those together. On your side, you have a couple of works that are really important that tell our story. Also, that one, the larger one.
The larger one here.
Yes, please. Yes.
This is crab catchers, and as I mentioned earlier, it relates to our food sources. Everyone has gone crabbing out here at one point or another.
Exactly.
Going to a crab boil or something of that nature, but it's not just the gentleman who's in the boat. All of these animals that you see, the raccoon, the heron, the turtles, all will eat crabs, blue crabs, whatever. So
nice. So you pulled together so many things. I just saw a sign recently, careful. Turtles Crossing, which I hadn't seen in many years. So we have so much of the environment. So our show is called Headliners of Hope, and you are certainly a headliner in the art world, and in so many other worlds. What are you hopeful about?
These days, I'm not too sure.
I know. If you can find a smidgen in the midst of, and that's important, in the midst of what we're going through, does your art bring hope to you and open up a world of joy to you where we're not experiencing that?
It does. I look upon it as my therapy in a sense.
Yes.
Because once I get engrossed in a painting, everything else goes by the wayside.
Yes.
The music, the television, everything, even phone calls, everything gets shut out.
Yes.
I just hope does, I mean, the paintings do bring me hope. But again, it's the continuum of things, I think, that nothing really stops forward progress.
Right.
You're always going to run into a hitch. Somebody's not going to like what you do, what you say, how you look, how you present, whatever, but you know yourself.
You have to keep on
You
going.
keep on going.
Yeah.
So again, moving forward, there's always hope in young people.
Right.
There's always hope in a new mindset, a new, because nothing's ever really new.
Right.
It's
But
because of the
it's
recycled,
recycled,
and maybe
yes.
keep on it, taking a new interpretation as it implies to different groups of people or circumstances.
Exactly.
But there's like a common thread that runs through life.
And I'm learning a new term for retiring is rewiring, that you actually are not stopping, but you're kind of just shifting some gears. So this is about your second or third
Oh my gosh, so this is my third retirement. Yes.
So I always ask my guests, what A plus B plus C equals success? And obviously you've had it at various stages in your life. What would you say at this stage, A plus B plus C equals success? Because like you said, we have to keep on going. What would be your formula?
Well, again, I think knowing yourself, having confidence in yourself, moving forward so that more people know these stories. It's not
Yes.
just about me.
Mm-hmm.
I paint for myself. These thoughts come from my own creative imagination, but
Yes.
they're meant to be put out there so other people can read my stories, and they all tell a story.
Yes, they do.
And
They
as opposed to
do.
reading a book, and again, you asked me about books. I would love to do. I've had a few offers of doing a children's book, but
Really?
they all seem to have sort of stopped at a certain point.
Well, I've got some ideas. We got to work
Okay,
together. Yeah, I
definitely.
love your work.
Yeah,
I really
thank
love
you,
your work.
thank you.
What would you tell an aspiring artist now who is about to finish school? Are there opportunities for someone who's an art history major or who just has a real longing to do what you do? How would you advise them?
Okay, now you know my background is not in art, so I'm
Right,
pretty much
right.
self-taught and
Yeah.
self-expressive.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say to them, and I've heard this, I used to model also, and I would hear
Really?
teachers talk to their students and tell them, you got to do it this way, that way, the other. Develop your own style.
Yeah.
It's good to know the techniques and everything like that, shading and proportion and perspective and all of that, but
Develop your own
develop your
style.
own style.
Yes.
It's so crucial. Things will fall into place. I think it's relatively easy to get into a gallery, have
Right.
your works represented. Even you may not start out in the format you want. Some people do street fairs,
Exactly.
or they do something in a church basement.
Mhm.
You start somewhere.
Exactly.
You're not
And you
gonna
get feedback
you get
and
exactly.
both positive and negative. They're like, baby, go back a little bit there, or I
Yes.
really like this, and you begin to know your audience. So I coach speakers, and I say the same kind of thing: develop your style, but also know your audience, and you have to do different things to know kind of who's the audience for you that really gravitates towards your work. So if you had to describe like your key audience, like who loves what you do and wants to know when you're doing more, how would you describe that person?
It's such a diverse crowd of people, though, that the
Okay.
individual is generally a creative person themselves.
Okay.
Or they have something within that resonates to the work. And what you were saying before, I love to listen to what people say about my works when they don't know who I am necessarily.
Exactly. Exactly.
And they will see things in my works that I did not know were there, which is just amazing. So to me, the key audience is someone that can really look into my stories, have an idea of what they're looking at. They might not know specifically what the impetus was for this,
Mm-hmm.
but they relate to something resonates within them, and they're not shy about asking me questions. I don't mind any question in the world, you know.
And maybe that story takes them somewhere in their imagination.
Exactly.
I picked up a book today, I think it was Express, and it said radical reimagination about the way people are now building their homes out here,
Yes.
It's not just this.
Right.
So maybe someone looking at your picture can imagine where Crank actually went, or Old Tom went, where maybe in their minds they can see something that you started, but they may take them away on a boat somewhere else. I mean, so you have begun really the imagination process as well.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Yes. Gwen Hagen said, your works, I would term them imagined realities.
Oh, I love it.
Yes,
Yes,
and
yes.
I use that as well sometimes in my artist statement because it's very apropos to what I do here.
Yeah.
But I like what you're saying about people then extending and moving forward with these storylines, and maybe it'll open up another field of research or another line of research that someone is not pursuing.
Exactly.
So, it's important again, because these are my children, my babies, basically.
Yes,
And as
yes.
someone, it's really got to go to a good home or a good institution or something of that
Right.
nature, because I spent so much time and there's so much of me in them and so much other information that's packed into them.
Right.
It's got to be to someone who's appreciative of the works.
Now, I love things in the round, so we cannot end
Oh,
without
this one,
speaking
yes.
about this one. And let me just see what on the back the name. Oh, it doesn't have
It has no name.
Tell
It's
me,
still,
tell
it's
me
still a
about
work
this.
in progress.
Oh, it's okay. This is a
Yeah.
work in progress. Okay.
Now, as I mentioned, I've been working with Donna Marie Barnes and David Rattray,
Yeah.
and this is a painting of the, I forget the exact name, the African and indigenous burial ground at Sylvester Manor on
Yes.
Shelter Island.
Yes.
Now, they're still trying to catalog who may be buried there. Of course, there are a lot of no records for a lot of the 200 to 300 stones that they found in the ground,
Yes.
often in a circular pattern. So, as we know, indigenous natives were also enslaved at Sylvester Manor,
Yes.
and down Long Island as well, everywhere
Exactly.
really.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this is my interpretation of pretty much it's called Spring Awakening, is sort of a working title. It's pretty much the spirits coming to life.
Oh, wow.
You'll see there are disembodied
Yes.
people. Some of them are only partially. Some are rising up out of the ground.
Yes.
They're coming out of the mists again.
Spirits coming to life.
Yes, and all ages, different races. And so again, it's a work in progress. I'm trying
Okay,
to.
well, when this keep progressing with this, because this
Yes.
really it draws me in very much so, and you have drawn me in with so much history of this area. So I want to thank you for speaking to us. Folk art narrative.
Narrative folk art.
Okay, I
Yes.
got it.
You got you.
Okay,
It's in there.
and
It's
we
in
got
there.
it today. You were with us, and you saw Living Color today by artist Michele A. Butler. And thank you for sharing your time with us. I want to give a shout out to our wonderful production team, and a shout out to you for staying with us. This has been Live with Sujay, Headliners of Hope, headliner Michele A. Butler. See you next time.